The United States is, quote, fighting in the same trenches, unquote, with Syria's brutal regime. That's what a Syrian government official told a newspaper there, suggesting the U.S.-led airstrikes are actually helping the murderous dictator Bashar al-Assad. We are fighting with his fighters. Well, we're not really on the ground. We're kind of the Air Force, is what he's suggesting. President Obama has said the mission is meant to wipe out the Islamic State, which it is, not to help Assad, and that's true. But welcome to unintended consequences. Not surprise consequences, not unforeseen consequences, just unintended consequences. Analysts say the airstrikes are indeed giving a big boost to the leader who for years now murders his own people. That's just one of the cornucopia of complications firing up President Obama's critics who are questioning the administration's strategy or lack thereof. And it's not just his critics, and in many cases it's his supporters. Let's bring in Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace, who's live in Washington. It seems to me the bottom line on this, Chris, on the right and on the left, as long as you don't work in Washington, this is so important that they may overrun part of the world, that they want to come over and kill all of us, that we have to spend right now $7 to $10 million a day to fight them. But it is not important enough for Congress to take a vote, and it is certainly not important enough for us to get our hands dirty on the ground. How do you reconcile that?
Well, I think it's harder to reconcile the congressional part of it. It seems to me we're involved in a new war. I know that the administration says under a variety of authorities, whether it's the War Powers Act, whether it's the 2001 authorization to fight al-Qaeda, whether it's the 2002 authorization to fight in Iraq, that they have legal authority. But, you know, on the other hand, Congress doesn't need the president to do it. Congress could decide to hold
but John Boehner said that's not how it's done. John Boehner said that's not how it's done. The president sends the words over. We read. Of course, that's not how it's been done lately, but that's how it could be done if they actually wanted to do it, which they don't because midterms are coming.
Exactly. That's my point, is that it could be done if they wanted to take this. But quite frankly, I think they'd all rather, both Republicans and Democrats, liberals and conservatives, would rather take a pass on this, get reelected, and then they can talk about it during the midterms. But it certainly is, I mean, during the lame duck session, but it certainly is a legitimate question, which is why isn't Congress, under its constitutional powers, why isn't it voting on whether or not to authorize the president to, in effect, launch a new war, even if it isn't a declaration of war, the authorization for the use of force. The question of ground troops is a different one.
It is.
You know, you can compare them to Bush, but there are big differences as well. Yes, we're involved in a war in that part of the world, but we're not sending tens of thousands or 100,000 troops over there. And the president clearly thinks that we don't need to do that and don't want to do that. Charles Crowder had an interesting column in the Washington Post today. He said it's an effort to destroy ISIS in Iraq. It's an effort and to use the Iraqis, and yes, they are certainly not effective now, but they may eventually be over time, and the Peshmerga, the Kurdish forces, which are effective now, to try to destroy ISIS in Iraq and to try to contain them in Syria. He calls it containment plus. And look, is it a full measure? No. But it may be as far as we can and need to go while we try to train up the Syrian rebels. And that's going to be a process of years.
Then why do we need to continue to pretend? Why are we pretending? Because that's what they're doing, Chris. They're pretending. They're pretending that our goal is to wipe them out, to destroy them. It is not our goal. If it is our goal, then our strategy is wrong. In the first place, the Peshmerga, the Kurdish fighters, will fight in Kurdistan. They will fight for Kurdistan. They want to be Kurdistan, not Iraq. Got no use for Iraq whatsoever. That ship has sailed. You ask anyone involved in any way with that region, and they'll tell you that. The Iraqi troops haven't stood up one single time. They just lost another battle 2 days ago, lost as many as 300 of their people, and they have melted away again. K.T. McFarland saying that the Iraqi generals were on the phone there with the ISIS people, and the ISIS people said, "We've got your children, we'll kill them all if you don't melt away," and they all just melt away. And as for this moderate Syrian rebels bunch, have yet to find out who the hell they are. You know, this is very much a fantasy, as the president once called it.
In the case of Iraq, you know, the arguments you're making are the arguments that were being made in 2006, and then George W. Bush launched the surge. And the surge involved creating a fighting force, a viable fighting force out of the Shiite military, and also getting the Sunnis, and they're talking about a Sunni National Guard, to throw off, in that case it was al-Qaeda in Iraq, now it would be ISIS. And, you know, the brutal way in which they rule that part of the world, the areas they control, is not necessarily something even the Sunnis like very much. After all, it's 5 Sunni Arab nations that are helping us to fight against ISIS. I'm not saying it's a perfect military situation, but it may be one that at least that degrades them and contains them, and maybe over time, and I agree, over time, destroys them.
On the Syrian side,
I mean, what's the alternative? What's the alternative? Do we just let them create a safe haven?
All I'm saying is stop pretending. They're saying we were relying on this new government in Iraq, this new government that they say is showing all these great signs. Chris, that's just not true. This new government does not yet have an interior minister. It does not yet have a foreign minister. It doesn't even have a leader of its own army. They haven't even come to that point yet, and there are no guarantees that they're going to be inclusive. If they were going to be inclusive, they could have already made those appointments. They've only been around for a few hours. We really have no idea who they are, and we're pretending like they're the second coming. They don't even have a defense minister yet. Chris, it's crazy.
I agree with all of that, but again, those are a lot of the same arguments that were being made back in 2006 and 2007 when George W. Bush launched the surge. And guess what? It took a while.
If we want 140,000 troops over there.
6 months in, I can remember 6 months in that people were concerned about it. Well, I don't know. Do you want to send 20,000, 30,000 troops in? I'm not sure a lot of people support that idea either.
I'm just tired of the pretending. That's all I'm saying. I'm confident that if we wanted to put 140,000 troops on the ground from now until, I don't know, the next generation is dead, that we could keep this thing under wraps for a while. How would it go then? This is a civil war that should have been fought between World War I and World War II, and here it is right in front of us. We drew some lines, didn't have the Civil War, now they're having it. And here we are, jumping right up in the middle of it, with a sort of strategy over in Syria, and stand up, stand down over in Iraq, and old Kurdistan's going to be better because the Peshmerga, no, they're not. Peshmerga are going to deal with Peshmerga land. That's it. The rest of it, I'm just not sure about, Chris. That's all I'm saying. I don't want them to have a safe haven. Nobody does. But I really am getting tired of the pretending. Getting tired of it. I'd love some soup.
I understand that. Well, I don't know. You need something. Listen, come on over to the house on Sunday. Mrs. Sunday will give you some soup.
You know where I'm going to be on Sunday? I'm going to be in Oxford because the Rebels will have just played Memphis and will be on a 6-day stretch leading toward Alabama. Rebels tied in
Now
Oxford.
I know why you're in a bad mood, because you're facing Alabama in a week.
I'm excited. I'm excited, Chris. It's the year.
No, I think you're concerned.
Today, this is the year, Chris.
Stop pretending. You know what?
Stop
pretending.
Stop pretending. Well,
hey, we got a show on Sunday. Fox News Sunday.
Tell me about it, please. Actually, I have words. Want me to read them?
Okay. Yeah, you read them. You promote it better than I do.
Chris will have the battle against the Islamic State on Fox News Sunday. He'll talk with Tony Blinken, the White House Deputy National Security Advisor. Also, not one but two senators, John Barrasso, the Republican from Wyoming, who's on the Foreign Relations Committee, and Angus King, independent from Maine, who's on the Intelligence Committee. That's this Sunday on Fox News Sunday on the Fox Broadcast Network. Check your local stations. Well, Chris? That's it?
Yes.
That's all. That's it, right?
We're also going to have Ben Carson to talk about Eric Holder, and we're going to have Reese Witherspoon, a nice Southern girl, to talk about her new movie. Mm-hmm. Go Mississippi. Go Ole Miss.
Hotty toddy, everybody.
Hotty toddy.
Good to see you, Chris. Thank you.